What up, thugs? Rev up your armored car and drop those kids off at the pool, because it's time to raise some concerns at the PTA meeting and yell at low-level retail workers. Do you know who we are? This is Super Despair World. We've been podcasting in this city for over 15 weeks. Okay, 15 weeks. And we just want to talk to a manager. Please get a manager. We just want to talk to your manager. Or maybe an audience of podcast listeners. That's good too. Folks, this is the only podcast that's not going to call the police on you for loitering. And more importantly, we're actually very big fans of loitering on here. So big that we've created our own Discord server where you can loiter to your heart's content with us. There's a link to it down below. Come check out the Discord server now.
Hell yeah, we have a homeowners association there too, so don't worry about anybody violating any rules that you might arbitrarily have. We'll take care of that for you as long as you pay taxes. That's really all it comes down to.
Yeah, and as long as you follow our Google document on all the things you can and can't have as your Discord profile picture, that's very important to us. It's just gonna raise the value of everybody's Discord profile.
Yeah, it's the character of the neighborhood that we're really concerned about. It's not limiting individual freedoms, of course. We're all libertarians here, but
we're a nice, good-natured white picket fence Discord server, not one of those like inner city Discords, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. With those people, we're not gonna poo-poo them, but we just have our own culture here, and you need to. Yeah.
How many more dog whistles can we fit into this?
I don't know. Probably not too many more.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our first big announcement today. We've kind of teased the Discord server for a little while, and it took me a little bit of time to get off my ass and set up the bots and the roles and all that. But it's finally open. You can come check it out. And more importantly, we have another announcement. After many, many weeks of joking about it and begging for your hard-earned money, well, now you guys can actually give it to us. We have opened our own Patreon for the show.
Yeah, wow, a Patreon. Now, when I talk about donating to the Patreon, it's not just a completely unhinged, failing joke. It's actually alluding to something that's real, so that's pretty fun.
Yeah, we've been in talks in private for a long time about like, okay, how are we going to handle like the money situation and the Patreon and everything? We thought, okay, we're going to try to keep things a little humble here. We're still kind of starting out at this whole like podcasting thing. So for now, there's just a single tier. If you want to send us a sinister $6, just as a general show of support, we'd really appreciate that. We'll give you a little shout out at the end of the show. And it would mean the world to us. We do have plans in the future to add some more tiers to that, but we're not going to ask for more money until we have some nice goodies to give away to you guys. So look forward to it.
Yeah, and we won't forget the original supporters, by the way. You'll be looked at fondly when we go back in the tomes of lore that our scribe is currently writing about Super Despair World. So just keep that in mind. If it does tickle your fancy to do that kind of thing, but if not, that's also cool. Just come to the Discord and hang out. Everybody there is pretty cool.
Yeah, 3 cents of every dollar you give us goes to feeding the scribe. So make sure they are well fed for a long time.
Yeah, it depends on what quality of gruel we give them is how much is donated at this point.
Their diet is in your hands. So please make sure only you can feed the podcast scribe.
Yeah, they're not getting a complete diet at this point. We'll just say that.
Yeah, well, we're starting out. We can't have everything perfectly worked out like one of those big. We're not here like a big podcast. We don't represent big podcast. We're just the little guys, and it's our birthday.
Yeah, we're independent small business owners. So
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of independent small business owners, if you guys couldn't tell from the intro, today we're taking an exotic expedition down to lightest America, where we're going to observe the suburban mom in her natural habitat. This is something we kind of touched on a little bit last episode. I think it was actually in my notes to cover last time, but we didn't fit into the episode, so I thought let's make it its own thing. Today I kind of wanted to explore this idea of what I'm going to call suburban paranoia. This kind of like feeling you get when you look at a lot of people who grew up like kind of privileged, relatively well off in like suburban America. They don't really have a lot of real problems, but somehow they're just gripped by this fear that someone's out to kill them, and they are going to prepare extensively for the day when that maybe happens.
Yeah, I think it's a weird human trait that when there's not any actual perceived danger, people tend to make it up in their head because just people can't live without drama in the slightest. We all want to sleep on a hammock, sipping delicious nectar out of a coconut, but I think a lot of people really aren't equipped for that kind of lifestyle. They really just need something to be paranoid and freaked out about and to mauled over. And this is exactly the demographic that we're going to explore today.
Yeah, this is going to be maybe a bit of an introductory episode in an ongoing series on capital H white people in America, because I feel like this is something a lot of us might have experience with. Now, longtime viewers of the show might know that I'm not actually American myself. I grew up here in Western Canada, and I'll be upfront here. I grew up in a pretty well off, like relatively privileged suburban kind of area, and you know what? It was nice in a lot of ways. It was not like a lot of the suburbs you see here in America. They're just like complete copy pasted homes with no trees or anything. It was pretty woodsy, kind of semi-rural, whatever. So I've gotten very used to growing up around the kind of suburban moms you see. They're just like very, very busy, very paranoid about the lives of other people. And I will say it does definitely seem to me like this is something that's gotten worse with time. But maybe, Dave, you could give your thoughts on that.
Well, I as you said, I think there's different flavors of suburbs. There's the type of suburb that's kind of adjacent to a main city type of place. Those I have less of a problem with. Then there's like the real cut off, like very exurban suburbs that they do actually have like kind of trees, and it's a little bit more country, but not quite. You're completely out in the sticks. And then there's the middle.
My suburb was so exurban that you go down the wrong street and you'll get a nice breath full of cow shit in the fields surrounding us.
Yeah. And I've definitely been to those places, and there's a lot of shitheads who live out in those type of places. Don't get me wrong. That one I kind of understand a little bit more, and also the aforementioned one. But then there's this middle ground one. The drywall and vinyl siding, cul-de-sac, quote-unquote nice place to raise your kids type of place, where all the houses are, about 700 grand US, and they're really they're okay. It's okay. It's nothing special. It's not near anything. The closest bastion of culture that you have is like a Starbucks and a strip mall with a Target and a grocery store chain in there. And then if you drive down a little bit more, there's about 30 car dealerships. And those places, I think that is the ground zero, the mecca, if you will, for the type of terrible suburbanite, the scared suburban mom that we are going to explore in depth in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So with most episodes, I feel like we give a lot of examples of the thing we're talking about, and then we kind of come to a conclusion at the end. But for this one, I thought it might be better if we just kind of lay out like our end idea right at the start here, and you can kind of see what we're getting at throughout the episode as we give some examples. So I think a big element of what you see with this whole like suburban paranoia and like a fear of your neighbors, this whole deal is, I really feel like, so maybe around the like 80s or 90s, there was this like big push in America, the whole Reagan years. You can blame pretty much everything on Reagan. This idea of like everybody has to be part of the nuclear family. Don't think about raising your kids as part of like a community. This whole like, oh, it takes a village to raise a kid. Like, no, fuck that. We're all about the nuclear family, and you have to keep things inside the family. And I think this is a big part of the kind of like cultural decay you see in the suburbs of America, right? Where like everybody's kind of distrustful of their neighbor because they hear all these like news stories, or they listen to a lot of like true crime podcasts and shit about like murder cases and like these like violent crimes perpetrated by like, oh, it could be somebody that you know. But the reality is that shit happens like very rarely. To the point that most people, like, you do not need to live your life in fear of like the person next door like doing something utterly psychotic. But because a lot of people like buy into this like so readily, it kind of turns them into like the violent psycho that they're so afraid of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, when you make it a point to fight monsters, you become a monster yourself. And I think that goes back before the Reagan years, and it extends to like really an ethos of extreme selfishness. And you can see that in like a lot of time. Like I watched some show, I can't even remember what it was, and like this dude, he was like some boss at some company, and he had to lay off a bunch of people, and he had like a crisis of conscience about it, and his wife was like, well, you're just doing what's right for your family. And it's like, and that really kind of stuck with me, just in the sense of, because it really does kind of nail down like the mindset that these people have, is like, well, it's about you're actually a good person if you look out for you and your own, and even if it's at the expense of a shit ton of other people. And then also the thing about distrusting your neighbors. I mean, there is objective data that the world now, or I mean this country at least, or this region, is safer now than it's ever been. But the paranoia, the fear, is completely out of control. And I think we have various forms of media to blame for that. And this has really come to a head now with the current obsession with true crime bullshit.
Yeah, folks, it's worse than it's ever been. Not the actual crimes themselves, but we've got like a true crime epidemic in this country, and it's driving people mad. I think you definitely see a lot of the like underlying like ideology of this, and just like a lot of popular media, right? Like there's this movie that's been kind of popular in recent years. You've seen, or at least heard of, The Purge, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this a couple months ago, and it's really stuck with me. It kind of really tackles this mindset of like, it seems like everybody's kind of eager to like secretly like take down their neighbors, like just for fear that your neighbors might get jealous of what you have, and they'll come after you. So the only thing that you can do is prepare ahead of time to get them first. And you see this a lot in like gun culture. A lot of people who buy guns are just like, they swear by this like safety thing of, I hope I never have to use my gun. It's just a safety thing just in case. But like deep down, a lot of people are kind of really, really itching to put themselves in situations where they'll have to, quote unquote, defend themselves from other people.
Come and take it, liberal.
Exactly. You see a lot of like, you ever see one of these like older Gen X kind of dad guys, and they're wearing like a t-shirt that has like a skeleton on a motorcycle on the back, and a lot of text that's like, I'm 48 years old and I was raised in Kentucky and I would die for my family. So come fuck with me if you want to get put in a shallow grave or something like that.
Yeah, and whenever I see a guy like that, I think to myself, I don't want to fuck with that guy. Look at that shirt. He's
I mean, yeah, like if somebody is that dangerous that they feel comfortable announcing that to the world, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say. I'm not gonna put my family at risk by telling him that this is a Wendy's.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy who crosses state lines with an AR-15 to defend his personal safety, like a certain man baby that was in the news for quite a while, and I don't think he's doing too well. Rip Kyle R, our boy.
Yeah, hashtag justice for Kyle. I promise none of the podcast money will go to his bailout fund.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I don't know if he's in jail right now.
No,
but whatever.
he's all good. I think he had like a video game that was really shitty, and he's really been trying to grift off that, and it's not worked out for him very well.
Oh my god, maybe we'll play that on a stream sometime if I can get it without paying money for it.
Oh yeah. You're definitely not paying for it, but there's got to be I can't imagine there's too tight of DRM around that. I don't think whatever person he paid to make that, I don't think they really know about that.
Yeah, exactly. But to get back to the point that I've been stumbling through for a little bit now, our big idea for this episode is, I think, this kind of like lack of a real community, this kind of like imposed isolation and selfishness and focusing on your own family to the detriment of the entire rest of the world. I think this is the big source of a lot of like suburban paranoia and the root of why it seems like so many people in these white picket fenced like communities are just really eager to like kill each other at the drop of a hat, or more likely kill people of a different complexion than them.
Yeah, or somebody who doesn't paint their mailbox the right color. HOA rules are there for a reason, folks. They're there for a reason. We got to keep the character of our neighborhood intact.
Yeah, we got to make sure that property values don't dip an entire $200.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this topic, as I said, this was kind of born out of my notes for last week. One thing we were looking at last week was these armored like apocalypse trucks, and as ridiculous as all of those are, a lot of the marketing for those, it seems very oriented around dudes, around like your dad wearing his like skeleton motorcyclist t-shirt or whatever, guys coming up on Jan 6th ready to knock some heads of those damn dirty Democrats.
God damn them.
But there's like an entire different side of the marketing for these things, and it's marketed towards your mom as well. Suburban moms who just can't feel safe picking up their kids from the pool without like the comfort of the fucking Batmobile at their disposal.
Yeah, I mean, in fair, there are a lot of ruffians at the pool. Who knows what kind of weapons they're strapped with? They might have slingshots. They might have fentanyl-laced blowgun darts. They could have anything. I mean, kids these days.
They might have a rainbow flag.
Yeah, which probably means they're carrying all sorts of Antifa improvised weapons with them, because that's what they do. They go on.
They might be carrying some concealed pronouns. You never know.
Yeah, you don't want to get shot with a they/them bullet.
Yeah, or even worse, an it's. That's powerful.
I mean, that's
stuff.
fair. I don't want to get shot with an it's bullet. If that's how I go down.
I've seen the kind of people on Twitter that are packing an it's on them, and I would not want to fuck with those guys even more than the guy wearing the skeleton.
Yeah,
t-shirt.
I'd rather get shot by the skeleton guy. At least then I kind of know what I'm dealing with. But if I get goblin stabbed by an then it's just like, man, really, I'm going out like this? Come on. Come on.
Yeah, those puppy girls are rabid. Don't fuck with them. But importantly, Dave, before recording, I was actually showing you this TikTok of this like suburban mom like showing off her armored car. That was fucking insane.
Yeah, that one, that definitely went along with the aesthetic of the ones we looked at on the previous episode, but this one was like it was tricked out to the max. It had it had all sorts of really fun features.
So this pudgy little blonde white lady comes onto the camera, and first of all, she's wearing like a bulletproof vest and like a SWAT helmet, like she's going out to war to like reclaim this country from the filthy libs. But the vehicle she's showing off, it's called the Rezvani Vengeance. And you know what? Nothing tells me this vehicle is going to keep my family safe, and it's purely for defensive purposes, than calling it the Vengeance. I feel safe in that motor vehicle.
Yeah, and it had everything. It had armor plating, bulletproof windows. My favorite feature that it had was there was a button for a fucking smoke screen. Like, imagine that woman is going to be such a menace on the road. Like, there's going to be somebody like following her like two car lengths away, and she's going to be like, that's obviously a rapist. He's going to kill. And then she's just going to like throw up a smoke screen and cause like a 15 car pile up behind her.
It's not just a smoke screen either, but there were also like blinding strobe lights, both on the front and back in case you're being followed, as she said.
Yeah, the ones on the front are cool. It's like if you're driving in reverse and somebody's following you, you have to blind.
There was like a pepper spray dispenser like near the mirrors.
Yes, it's so good. And then the icing on the shit cake for that one was then she was like, there's also a PA system for when you pick your kids up at soccer practice. And then she gets on the PA and it's like, Jason, your mama's here. And it's just like, dude, imagine you're that kid. Like, that kid is so fucked. Yeah, that kid is so fucked. They're going to immediately move to California. They're gonna have pronouns. They're going to be doing all sorts of crazy shit. Like, a mom like that, you cannot help but fuck up your child. And they're not going to be fucked up in the way that you are. They're going to completely rebel against you, because not only is she an insane paranoid suburban mom, but she's also incredibly white and corny. So it's like nobody would be cool with that. Like, you have to, as a kid, rebel against that entire personality 100%. So that kid, we're going to find him on Grindr. If the kid even exists. I'm sure she does have kids, but
I mean, you say that kid is fucked, but riddle me this: what if she's driving her kids, Jason, I think his name was, on his way to his like piano recital, and suddenly the road gets filled up by like a bunch of the war boys from the Mad Max movies? What then? You know, like, then you'll be glad that she's driving the Vengeance.
Yeah. in that very likely scenario, then he might be like, hell yeah, I'm gonna prep myself for this too. But more likely, he's going to be taking prep, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think I get what you're picking up. Actually, you know, funny enough, that this whole thing, it reminds me of like an embarrassing childhood story that I feel like sharing here for the first time. So when I was a kid, it took me a long time to learn how to ride a bike, and it didn't help because the first time my parents ever got me a bike, it was not a regular bike, right? We were like decently well off, so my mom spent a little bit of extra money on this bike. It was like a little kid's bike, but it was kind of like a low rider kind of build, like a fucking motorcycle, and it looked corny as hell. And I she spent all this money on it, and I was like, Mom, I'm not riding this bike. This looks corny as hell. And that's why I didn't learn how to ride a bike until like 4th or 5th grade.
That's why.
But the point, I bring this up because I think that's how the kid would feel if you're just like hanging out with your friends and your mom comes to pick you up in the fucking Batmobile with all these like armor plates and like violent accessories packed into it. It's the same kind of, I don't know. I feel like there's a unique type of embarrassment that you only feel if you're a kid growing up in the suburbs and your family is very embarrassing about how they spend their wealth.
I don't know. I mean, kids are stupid. I think you could play it in different ways. Like if you showed up and with that car and they were playing like La Cucaracha on the horn and then you just hit the smoke screen just for fun. Like the kids might think it's cool, but she's rolling up there, screeching out of the window that Peyton is late for his violin practice or whatever they make their kids.
Oh, honey, boo boo, we're gonna be late for basket weaving.
Yeah.
This. Also, I have to issue a small correction about the things you list in this video. At no point in the video did they actually say that the windows are bulletproof. It was actually the bottom of the car, which is explosive proof.
Oh, okay. Yeah. For the IEDs on East Meadowbrook Lane. Yeah, that's a big concern. So good.
Yeah. Evergreen Terrace has never been safe ever since they installed all those landmines. It's this country's going to hell.
Fucking Antifa, man! I'm telling you, they want to take what's ours. They want to take my sump pump and my the brand new lawnmower that I got. They want it all.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this last time, but these vehicles make all these claims about being bulletproof and so like protective and whatnot, and we've had a lot of fun in recent months, like shitting all over the Cybertruck. We've all had fun poking at those videos of that thing like struggling to go up a slight incline. But I look at all these like expensive like Batmobile-esque vehicles and I just feel like there's no way that these things hold up under like even the smallest bit of fire from like a cheap ass AR-15 or some shit. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, without question. And we'll never find out because none of these people have ever experienced a moment of danger in their lives, and they won't outside of their own imaginations, of course.
Yeah, I feel like we might have come very close to finding out on Jan 6th, but I don't know. Like it did not escalate to that point. So I guess it'll be a mystery forevermore.
Yeah, another
hopefully
another failed militia. Great job, guys.
Yeah, so that's a decent kind of intro to the type of people we're dealing with. This mom rolling up onto the TikTok feed with body armor and a helmet or whatever. And we've come up with a lot of different words to describe people like this, one of which y'all might be very familiar with. Dave, what would you describe to be a Karen?
A Karen is an incredibly self-centered person who perceives the world around them, and I'm not gonna say her because there are male Karens too. I usually use the term Bob and Karen because that's a normal name for them. But no offense to any Bobs out there. Maybe call yourself like Robbie or something like that. We can move on from that. But anything that annoys them, which is everything because they're terminally miserable people, they see as a personal affront, a slight against them that they have to fight against. And this comes back to what I was saying before, is these people, they have no actual hardship in their lives other than deep existential crises, and they're probably in a loveless marriage, and their kids probably hate them, and they probably find no enjoyment or value from anything that they do because they live in this terrible culture that they find themselves in. So they need to invent issues and drama in their lives and react to it in the most horrible way that you possibly can. And that, I think, is a Karen. There's probably some other aspects too. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think that's a good intro to it. If you've heard about Karens before, it's probably been in the context of seeing like some video on TikTok of like a blonde, older white lady, probably yelling at like a low level retail employee, probably asking for a manager, or more likely, scolding a group of black teenagers, because she feels uncomfortable. There's definitely a very like racist element to it as well. Just these very like privileged moms that are just like eager to call the police or summon some kind of authority like a manager or whatever to answer to whatever is troubling them at the moment. There's a big element to it as well, which I want to say is kind of both like a generational and also like a class sort of thing. Like obviously they tend to be like pretty middle class, pretty like not necessarily rich, but like living comfortably. Maybe they have some money to spend, but it's also like a generational thing, right? Where you see this a lot with like older people, especially like boomers, where it kind of seems like their attitude towards like everybody they encounter, especially in like a retail position, is like, oh, I'm paying you money so that you can like serve me for a few moments, or like I pay my taxes,
I pay
and
your
I have
salary.
This neighborhood. so like you can't be here. Like I will call the police to enforce my perceived investment in the system or whatever.
For sure. I that's a part that I love about them, and I agree with the previous point. Like, and it's definitely like a petite bourgeoisie mindset where they really think that because they paid like $11 for a sandwich that just a team of people should be out rolling out a red carpet for them and just like dusting off their cloak. And
another interesting thing about the whole Karen phenomenon is that Karen is very much like a modern term we have for these things, right? In the process of preparing for this episode, I actually did a little bit of research for once, and I learned that the whole racial element to it is not a coincidence. This is something that's actually been very long ingrained in the history of America. So as it turns out, way back in like colonial times, there was another term for these sorts of ladies. They were termed a Miss Anne. If you were a Miss Anne, that meant you were like the type of white woman who was very prone to like making like false allegations or accusations around like black people, or being like extra like commanding and like very like mean to like slaves or like servants or whatever. So this whole thing is like very deeply rooted in the history of this.
We should bring that back. I mean the term, not the other thing. But the other thing I was gonna say,
I don't know. The thing is, when I hear the term Miss Anne, I just kind of think of the porn star, which maybe that says something about me. But
the other thing I was going to say, though, is another thing that I think is funny about Karens is they think the police are their own personal, like, their own personal bodyguard, their own personal private militia to go and deal with ne'er-do-wells that offend them for whatever reason. I mean, these are the people who they definitely post on Facebook like 4 or 5 times a day when anybody's like, I can't pay my medical bills. I'm like, another victim. Everybody's a victim now. And these people definitely have the biggest victim complex that you could possibly ever have. Just about the stupidest fucking shit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? You actually can't really blame them, because like to an extent they're kind of correct. Like let's be real. If you are like the victim of like a break-in and you get some shit stolen and you call the cops to help you out, they're not going to do anything. They're going to stand around like loitering in your front lawn, maybe going through all your shit, maybe even finding something to knock against you.
Oh, true.
As far as the law goes, they're not out to serve and protect average people. To some degree, I would say, yeah, the police are there to enforce the whims of the like small business owner types of like white ladies who will raise a big stink to the local newspaper or make a big deal about it on Facebook or something. So, to a degree, yeah, there's absolutely some truth there that the police are there to serve the whims of these very distressed and concerned older ladies.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely true. It's not what they should be doing, but I guess it is what they do end up doing a lot of times. Fun.
Yeah, and speaking of the police, we brought this up earlier as well, but there's definitely an element to it of the whole true crime angle. This is definitely something you see a little bit more nowadays, but it's kind of always been around. I remember like in the early 2000s, you go onto like TV and you're channel surfing, you would probably run into one of these shows like America's Most Wanted or I don't recall the others by name, but you would see a lot of, or like Cops or whatever.
Yeah.
That was another big
And I
one.
mean like
just a lot
and like Dateline NBC and 60 Minutes and even like the local news, they'd always be like, a white woman was abducted from her home today and police are very
and there was
upset.
There was the phone number for Crime Stoppers. You remember Crime Stoppers?
Yeah.
You could send in tips to stop crime in your local area.
That was
because I guess
that was the original
of the wrong complexion is loitering around.
Yeah, the original Reddit crime sleuths who were like, I'm gonna dig into this. And they're just like, they're just fucking.
We did it, Reddit. We saved the city.
We did it, Reddit. We caught the Boston bomber. Oh wait, oops. It wasn't him. We just ruined his life instead. We did it, Reddit.
That wasn't very epic bacon of us.
That was not wholesome Keanu Chungus 100, but also, whatever.
Yeah, that was not breathtaking. Oh well. I guess a different kind of breath was taken, but we'll not get into that. But yeah, as kind of like TV and like legacy media has kind of declined, I think a lot of the audience for this kind of stuff has moved on to true crime podcasts or like police body cam like YouTube channels. We've always talked about like, oh, don't consume the slop on this show, but I've got to make a confession here. As a white woman, I'm not perfect myself. I've watched many hours of these videos on YouTube where they do like a police interrogation of somebody who is like may or may not be guilty of some morbid shit, and I have to admit it's very like addicting stuff, but there's also a lot of like fucked up ideology that kind of just like they kind of sell to you like underhandedly if you watch too much of this stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. And there are channels, the ones that I like are the ones where you're viewing a police interrogation, but it's by somebody with a law background. And there was a guy on, I think there's a few people who do this, but there was a guy on YouTube or TikTok or something that I watched a while ago. And it would be like an interrogation. He would stop the video and be like, actually, what Officer Dickhead said is not correct. By law, and then he would like California versus Cohen 1974, you cannot do blah, blah, blah. And it was like, that's actually like, it's entertaining and it's also like informative, and it's also like pretty practical information as well if you ever find yourself getting fucked with by Officer Dog over there.
Yeah, there's definitely like a big spectrum to these kind of shows, and I will admit a lot of them unfortunately are very like pro cop, where they'll be like, entitled Karen gets thinks she's above the law and until she meets Officer Dumbfuck who puts her in her place or whatever, and it's just like dozens upon dozens of videos of like cops manhandling like older ladies or something, which I find them annoying as much as the next person, but like there's a clear audience for this kind of
for sure.
It's basically like a violent kind of pornography.
Yeah. And that's the audience of cops. They're definitely like, yeah, get this white trash drug addict asshole. Why don't you just cuff his ass already? Slam him into the police cruiser. And it's like weird. It's like weird like violence porn for authoritarian monkeys.
Yeah, on the other side of the spectrum, you have the much better videos where the title might be something like, "A dumbfuck officer thinks he can arrest this person on some bullshit charges. Here's the way he abuses his authority." And those are much more entertaining. Although admittedly it is still basically like slop content.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So.
And there's a few. I'm not a real big true crime person, but I will say there's a few good documentaries on like Netflix and some other streaming services that it's a very compelling story, but a lot of times it just ends up coming down to like ACAB. It's just like it's like a story that's like fucked up and it's terrible what happened to this person, and then it's just like the cops were like, well, why did you get abducted? We don't believe this story. And then like the real narrative of it is just like the cops were just fucking assholes and they just like didn't believe them the whole time. And then at the end of the episode, it's like, yeah, there was actually like a lot of really sussy corruption going on there, and a lot of like weird career dudes trying to make a name for themselves by being assholes. And it's just, and then the series just ends, and it's like, and then you go on the internet and you're like, look up like what happened to fucking Detective Fuckwit, and it's just like, yeah, he still works for the Chicago Police Department. He was suspended with pay for 1 week due to something completely unrelated, but yeah, he's gonna retire with a full pension. It's like, oh, cool. That's the story.
Yeah, it's a complete mess. We're definitely going to do an episode at some point on the problems with policing and the fucked up ways they train the boys in blue to think.
Yeah, that's gonna be a heavy one.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna need to prepare for that one. Maybe
for sure.
Maybe roll up in the Sinister Six just to be extra safe.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, to bring it back to podcasts, I think there's a lot of different like subgenres within them, and I admit I used to be a lot more into true crime like a couple years ago, but the thing that really shook me out of it was discovering this type of true crime show. I wanna describe it as like the Yas Queen Slay kind of true crime shit, where it was like these. I'm not gonna name the show by name. I don't even know if it's still going, but it was these two ladies, like two co-hosts. They were talking about like different like cases of like fucked up murders or whatever, and it was at some point where I realized like 5 or 10 minutes into watching this, they had spent like most of that time just like laughing about like making martinis and just having like goofy like silly little girls chat, and then another several minutes like plugging some like makeup sponsor that they were into, and then just like immediately moving into like talking about someone who had their like guts disemboweled in their own home. And I was like, this feels really jarring. This feels like kind of fucked up. It feels like, I don't know, we're kind of like being very vapid and like just gross about something that should be taken a little bit more seriously.
Oh, for sure.
It was at that point where like I just felt like I kind of like snapped out of it. I just realized like, wow, you know, watching hours and hours of people like just like hoot and holler about the most heinous crimes ever committed, and like sipping on martinis and shit. It's like, I don't like this. This feels like gross and disgusting, and like maybe nobody should watch this.
It's weird.
Stuff.
They treat like true stories like a horror movie. Like, oh, that was icky. Oh my god, can you believe she got her head cut off? Oh my god, that was so scary. I hate that. And
they talk about like real life serial killers the way that I see people talk about like their favorite Final Fantasy characters on Twitter.
Yeah,
which is really upsetting.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I linked you that Medium article earlier, and I could drop the link just because I don't want to like, not that I'm quoting somebody, but reference somebody without giving credit. But it was the woman, like she was talking about just kind of what we're talking about is like this hysteria over perceived danger around every corner, but this person actually was like assaulted out of nowhere. And something that she said was that when she got attacked and luckily she survived, but she was like, if I were to have been killed in that situation, like what would the aftermath have been? Would I be on these like shitty Netflix documentaries? Would I be people talking about me on like their shitty YouTube channels and their true crime documentaries or podcasts? Just like, oh my God, she got us all. Anyways, this is thanks to our sponsor, Better Sleep. And then, anyways, she got stabbed a bunch of times. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's a valid point, man. Like, and that's kind of part of the thing, too, is like these people just completely shit on an actual person's legacy and use their tragic story to sell fucking mattresses and, like, have a fun thing to talk about on their podcast. And I never really thought about that before I read that and before what you said. And that's, like, probably even a worse outcome of these true crime podcasts and whatever than just the absolute like brain rot and fear that it instills in their audience.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, here's the thing, right? They don't actually like see the people being talked about in these shows as actual people, right? Because they're only really concerned about their own family, their own like selfish, like tiny little internal world out there in the suburbs. There's just them and their family and like the murderers out to get you, and like everybody else is like just a potential murderer that you haven't caught.
Yeah, it's just
yet.
it's just a cautionary tale. It's just a cautionary tale.
Yeah, it's completely fucked. It's just one of those things where, like, look, we all consume the slop at some point. Nobody's, like, totally free of it. I've admitted I've watched plenty of this stuff, but, like, you really have to watch yourself because this kind of stuff is going to, like, subconsciously affect the way that you just think and see the world. I know it's a cliche, but literally nobody is immune to propaganda. If you think you can just like watch dozens of hours of this stuff and not be like affected at all, and you don't like, I don't know, start getting some weird ideas about like how safe or unsafe you might be out in public, you're kidding yourself.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
Like, you got to be careful, and I think a lot of this stuff is definitely like this is the root of a lot of the paranoia you see in like very privileged suburban kind of people.
Yeah, and I'm definitely guilty of this too. Like I'll watch some like not post-apocalyptic, but like disaster films where just like, you know, something crazy happens and what do we do? It's like kind of like everything's falling apart. And then I'm like, maybe I should start. I mean, this goes back to the prepper one too. I was like, maybe I should start like, you know, just having some like a bug out bag or whatever, which, as I said before, it's like a good idea to do. Just, you never know when there's going to be a fucking tornado or some shit like that. But like the thing is, I do that and then I think about it and then I kind of go back to regular life. But if this is just like your thing and you're consuming this content just like every day, multiple times a day, it's going to like really just like really fuck with your reality to the point where you're just like, it's going to ingrain itself so much in your psyche that everywhere you go, it's just like murderer, kidnapper, human trafficker, rapist. They're everywhere. Oh my God, I better get a car with a fucking smoke screen built into it with armor plating, because that's...
Guys,
yeah.
I'm really freaking out. Somebody left a zip tie on the handle of my Sinister Six, and now I feel like the Mexican cartel's out to get me.
Yeah, don't you know?
They're hiding under the truck, ready to slash my ankles.
My totally real friend that I totally didn't make up, totally told me really that that means you're marked for human trafficking, because that's how human trafficking works, right? You just pick up random people off the street and shove them into you're like the goddamn Hamburglar with a fucking bag with a dollar sign on it, and you just pick up like white woman from the fucking gas station. You just put them in your bag and you just run off, and then you put them on a human trafficking truck.
But I wanted to talk about another element of this whole like true crime content on the internet and how it might fuck you over financially. Dave, have you seen any of these videos on TikTok where the format is something like this white woman, she's like in her like lavish but very bland looking apartment, and she'll say something to the effect of like, My boyfriend's going out for several months on a business trip, and I'm going to be all home alone, and I'm feeling very unsafe. But thankfully, I've installed these 20 different shitty little security cameras from China that you can buy from the link below, or these like portable locks that won't stop shit if someone wants to kick down the door or whatever. I'm totally safe because I bought all these shitty little gadgets in case some like murder rapist wants to bust in through my windows. You ever see one of those videos?
Yeah, of course. It's like the worst sound or song in the background, and then she's putting all these like doohickeys on the door and shit, and then it's like link in bio for where to buy these.
Yeah, and first off, let's get this out of the way really quick. Let's call it what it is. This is a type of pornography. Okay, this is porn for some people. The woman is like really like dressed up and kind of like skimping around in her apartment, being like, ooh, I'm so vulnerable and dangerous, but thankfully I have these products or else something really bad would happen. And it's like this makes me really uncomfortable to watch this stuff because I am not like the target demographic of these things. And also like all of these products are like complete garbage. They don't work. It's just some like drop shipping scam, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like what person who's trying to bust into your place is going to be like, it's a little bit harder. Never mind. I guess we won't. Which, like, this is the thing with all of this stuff is there aren't, like, roving bands of burglars that just go, like, busting into places. Like, thieves and criminals are very opportunistic. They're going to, if they bust into your shit, they know that this is a place they can like easily do something in. They're not just like breaking down doors randomly and just like stealing your fucking jewels and your like $300 television and shit like that. Most people don't really have that much like really valuable, easy to steal shit. And to go with that is like if you're gonna have a crime done against you, most likely it's going to be somebody very close to you. Especially with violence, it's more likely than not that it's going to be your partner or something like that, not just like some random person. So like, yeah, these people they're preying on people with an incorrect view of where the place from which danger comes, and they're also grifting at the same time. They're scamming. They're trying to sell shit. So yeah.
Yeah, it feeds into this like completely imaginary view of reality where like around the corner there's just like some like high level like enemy mobs, like it's Skyrim, like you're just gonna run into some bandits that are ready to like divest you of whatever like cheap shitty products you have in your like luxury apartment in California or something. And that's just not really the case. That's just not really how it works. And even no matter how many of these like shitty cameras or whatever you install, if somebody's like really determined to bust in and like do harm onto you, there's really not much you can do to stop them, especially if you live in like America and everybody's like legally allowed to own just like fucking machine guns or whatever.
Well, you have a bigger machine gun.
I don't know what's going on south of the border, but
you have a bigger machine.
Well, yeah, okay, well
that's why in every room,
nobody's
in every room in my apartment,
nobody's getting those machine guns through some like drop shipping scam on like TikTok or whatever. Okay, they're getting them from their boy Bubba at the tire fire. You know what I mean?
That's true. I have a howitzer machine gun mounted, pointing towards the door of every room, just in case. You know, anything can happen. It's a dangerous world out there.
Yeah, every time I leave my house, I make sure to set up some kind of like elaborate, like Home Alone, like Rube Goldberg machine that'll just pepper someone with bullets if they open the front door the wrong way.
Yeah, I booby trap everything. I put like a shotgun shell with like a nail on the hammer with like some twine on the door handle. They're like, whoop! What the frick?
I forget the details actually, but I feel like there was this case I heard about a few years ago. I don't remember, it was somewhere in America, obviously, but there was this guy who owned this extra house, but it was kind of like run down and not really being used for anything. He just owned the property, and he got really tired of like kids breaking in to like vandalize the place or like spray paint the walls or whatever or some shit. So he like booby trapped the place and like killed some teenagers or some shit.
Yeah.
And it was like this whole like legal thing. Like, dude, you can't. It's not self-defense to booby trap your like extra home to catch some wild kids.
Catch
and,
some
like,
kids that are like
something.
spray painting and smoking weed in your house. Also, why do you just have an abandoned, like, do something with that? Why do you just have an abandoned house that you apparently care so much about that you're willing to like put IEDs in there to murder teenagers? That's awesome.
Yeah, I would give anything to hear that guy's thoughts on who's like predating on kids in schools, or like if the Democrats have any like underground tunnels beneath pizza complexes or whatever. I just want to know how he feels about protecting the children.
Yeah, you got to protect the children unless they go to my slum property. And then in that case, those children should be just eviscerated by
Yeah, I'm just gonna become the evil puppet from the Saw movies, just for my own sick entertainment.
For sure. Yeah, totally sane guy. So yeah.
Yeah, the suburbs are so fucked, dude. I feel like people don't do this if there's like goodness in their hearts, and like, I don't know, this seems like the byproduct of like a culturally dead country that just like only has like fucking products and consumerism to enjoy, but also the economy kind of sucks ass right now, so we can't really enjoy the products. So we've just got like this, right? Just like a bunch of paranoid fantasies about people out to get you, and like teenagers who are like yearning to step into bear traps or some shit on your extra property.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean,
it's fucked.
And I mean, we always riff on the symptoms for a while, but I mean, I always try to, at the end of the day, look at the root causes and the systems that lead to all of these like fucking insane cultural things that we live in. And yeah, as you said, I mean, like, American suburban culture is sterile. It's dead. There's nothing there. There's no sense of community. There's no meeting places. There's a deep, long-standing culture of like distrust, selfishness, and complete lack of community. This is really what it all comes down to, is like, I mean, I understand like wanting your own home, like that's totally fine. Sure, you know, little garden, stuff like that, but like, I just think that a lot of these people like don't really want what they have, and then they have to like post hoc justify why them with their family with like 1.5 kids needs like an 8-bedroom McMansion that's 47 minutes away from their jobs. And that kind of like really weird, just everybody else is doing it and I can afford it shit really leads to like a lot of problematic mindsets, just in the case of they're not fulfilled, they're not happy, and like they have to justify it somehow, right? And like there's the place that I live right now, which luckily we're moving in a few months. this is definitely a place where I've asked people, like, why do you live here? And they're like, it's a nice place to raise kids, which I've always said means no blacks. That's really what they mean.
Well, they say it's a nice place to raise kids, but also now every fucking parent is like, I don't want my kid to get abducted. They got to stay indoors all day and just play Fortnite and watch TikTok. Kids don't go outside anymore.
Well, exactly.
You're not safe. So it's like,
exactly.
Then what does it matter where you live? You know?
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing. And like we said earlier, this place, this country that we live in, is safer now, objectively, by every metric than ever. And but like, these people they just need to continue to say, like, oh, you can't go outside anymore. You used to be like, this is such a boomer thing. Like, you used to be able to go out and play with your friends. Can't do that anymore because. And this is the thing that they instilled us with, this complete fucking lie, that there's just dudes with like trench coats driving around in windowless vans, just scooping up kids with a big shovel, throwing them in the back, bringing them down to their like weird dungeon and doing like unspeakable, horrible acts to them, which... No, that doesn't happen. I mean, I'm sure that's kind of happened in some way. No,
I'm sure it's happened literally tens.
Yes,
of times.
exactly. But like, all of the things that really do happen with that, it's like an uncle, it's a family friend, it's the babysitter, it's some shit like that. It's not just yeah,
it's a Democrat.
Well, they're all Democrats, of course. Yeah, obviously. But that's a fucked up thing too. And again, if you look at statistics on like who is a real victim of violence in this world, it's fucking black men. And you, if you have a fucking ounce of intelligence, you know exactly why that is, because of, you know, demographics in neighborhoods and poverty and shit like that. But who is the most victimized? Who has the biggest victim complex? Who's the most scared of fucking everything? It's white women and white men, of course, too. But like the main consumer of this, like, oh my God, I'm going to get abducted shit, it's generally white women. And I don't have any data on that. If I'm wrong, please correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I gotta say, we gotta be a little careful here, because I know some people are gonna hear us say the word white and they'll get all these ideas about us making it like a racial thing. And, you know, I blame discourse and like 13-year-olds on Tumblr for like forever like permanently ruining our ability to talk about this stuff on the internet. But
true.
I think when we say white, we're talking about like very like the whole like WASP thing,
yes,
like white,
yes.
Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, just like very like white picket fence, like completely like they have no other culture than like being like American and maybe like being really fond of like the 50s for like segregation reasons. Or
yeah,
whatever.
We're talking
people who just
we're talking Ben Franklin white, not the modern conception of white. We're talking mayo sandwiches. We're talking Anglo.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not talking
as a white person. Well, I'm a blue person now, but I grew up white, but I wasn't just like regular white, right? Like my family is Romanian, so like I was like the kind of like spicy ethnic sort of white, right? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I just don't really relate to a lot of the stories people have about like growing up in these like copy pasted neighborhoods where every house looks exactly the same and everybody like says grace before eating and everybody has like 2.5 kids or whatever, and just all that stuff. I don't relate to it at all. In my case, like my experience with being from like an immigrant family is like, yeah, we look white, but I'll tell you, I get beat a lot more than a lot of my friends at school. So I don't know, maybe that's the difference. Maybe the thing that prevents some like older parents or whatever from going completely off the chain is like having these wackadoo beliefs like my my mom about how Romania is like the oldest culture on earth and like invented writing and all these other things. And I don't know. At the same time, I also look at my mom now and how she's like gone off the deep end on the anti-vaxxer stuff. So maybe it's just like a delaying tactic. Maybe this is just maybe this kind of paranoia is just an inevitable feature of the world we live in today.
Yeah, well, I mean, and there's a couple. First of all, I also kind of vibe with that. I mean, I'm what most people would perceive as white, but I never understood that like whole stereotype of like white people don't season their food, like TFW, you go to your white friend's house and they're eating
I have
boiled
a higher
chicken.
Spice tolerance than most people.
Yeah. So and that's the thing. I think when people make those memes and shit, they're talking about like waspy, just like Midwestern, just like absolute.
Like I said, it's capital H white.
Yes, capital H
you know?
white, not us. What Ben Franklin referred to as the swarthy races, which
exactly,
which was like pretty much everyone except for like Anglos, because he thought like Germans and like Swedish people were not white. He was like, no, those are the swarthy races. You need to be careful of them.
It's like an H.P. Lovecraft sort of thing where you're like Catholic and you look at Protestants like, oh, those are like literal fish people or some shit.
But I mean,
actually, I think Lovecraft was Protestant himself. I don't actually remember. Who cares?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Fuck. r/atheism. Fuck it. Who cares? You're all stupid. Just kidding. We love our religious viewers here, kind of, maybe.
I don't love any Redditors.
Yeah, I don't love any Redditors, that's for sure. But if you have a religion, you're not annoying about it. We love you. As long as you donate to the Patreon.
Yeah, consider making us your
Consider
religion.
tithing to the Patreon. I was compared to Jesus today, so it could be the prophecy. Maybe that's blasphemous for some people. I don't give a shit. Fuck it. But
we get a little blasphemous from time to time, as is our right as podcasters.
But the last thing I'm gonna say though, because you mentioned your mom, is I think it kind of goes back to like what we were saying before, is like if you really, and I'm not gonna like speak to your mom's situation or anything. I'm just assuming she's kind of like my mom. Love my mom. I'm not talking shit, but it's kind of like when you're kind of like in your older years and you're kind of just chilling and shit, like you don't really have that much like dire shit to deal with. Like you're kind of just chilling, kind of everything. Your house is paid off. Like you're retired. You're hanging out with your fucking dog. You see your kids sometimes. You do your little hobby. You fucking watch TV, whatever. Fucking awesome. Hell yeah. But like again, like for a lot of people, when you don't have any sort of thing, any sort of drama, any sort of issue to latch on to that's like very tangible and pressing in your life that you need to push back on, well, you might need to invent one. And then for a lot of people, I mean, that's why you see a lot of older people, they get into this fucking anti-vax, QAnon, fucking bullshit, this and that. There's a lot of different ways that could go. And you know, like some of it is worth fighting for, like anti-vaxxing. I'm fully on board with that. Just kidding. Get vaccinated, I guess, or not. I don't give a shit at this point. COVID's done, but maybe that's too controversial to say. Fuck it, whatever.
Well, it's we'll unpack there. I was gonna say I'm not gonna dive too deep into personal stuff about my mom, but I will say, you know, we moved out here to a very rural area, and I will say, while my mom is certainly not lacking in culture of a sort, we are certainly lacking in community out here. Like we don't know our neighbors like super well, right? Like we don't have a ton of people we like invite over for parties anymore, because that shit's like fucking expensive nowadays with the price of food and everything. And this kind of goes back to the initial like like thesis I raised earlier in the show about like, yeah, I think a lot of this like suburban paranoia is born out of people being like isolated, people not having like something bigger than themselves to like grip onto. A lot of places in America are just like culturally fucking dead. There's nothing to do. There's no like history there. It's all just copy pasted buildings like built over like a summer to accommodate however many like identical 2.5 children white families or whatever. It's just, this is kind of what you get when the only things to do where you live are like consume products, and now the products are too expensive, so we just sit alone watching these true crime podcasts and getting weird ideas about our neighbors. It's not good, and you know, I don't totally know what to do to fix it. I just think, you know, if you're old enough to move out of these families, you know, save up your money, treat yourself, don't anchor yourself to these like dead zones, because it'll rot your soul.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big problem, and I think for the most part kind of changing communities, and we should be a little bit more urban. It's very difficult now to say that, because all cities, they have incomprehensibly high rent prices. So it's like, it's easy to say move to a city. I would like to, but I mean, you can't, like, where are you going to go? And then just like, you're paying $3,000 a month for rent. Like,
I recently looked up the area in Vancouver that I used to live in. I used to have an apartment there when I went to college a couple of years ago, and I look at the price of rent that I paid in like 2017, 2018, and I look at it now, it's literally 3 times what it used to be.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, I can't imagine how much my college apartment cost, because it was pretty decent. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of a difficult thing. I mean, like with all of that stuff, I mean, I guess just kind of make it work as well as you can. Ideally, we'll all be changing our living situations to a more sane one. Make friends with your neighbors. Be cool to each other. Don't be scared. Nobody's going to abduct you, and you're not going to get murdered.
Let your kids fucking go outside and play with their friends
and ride bikes and shit like that. I did it when I was a kid. I never got abducted. It's safer now than it probably was when I was doing it. Even more so. So like, just really.
If you're that afraid of getting abducted, then, you know, maybe get a faster bike. Okay, yeah. They're not that expensive.
Yeah, buy your kid a really fast bike. Put a fucking 2-stroke motor on it.
Buy them the shitty fucking lowrider motorcycle style bicycle that I never rode.
Still
anywhere.
Salty about that, huh?
Yeah, it's that thing sat in our garage for years. I was just like, I don't know, even as like 8 or 9-year-old me, I was just like a little too self-aware for my age. I was like, this isn't cool. I'm going to get bullied.
Yeah, well, you probably, I don't know. Lowrider bikes are kind of funny.
I did not have the riz to pull it off at that age. If I got one now, well, I don't know. I think that would actually be even more.
Just ride it ironically. That's my real takeaway. My final takeaway for this episode.
The thing had fucking like flames on the side, like a fucking Guy Fieri t-shirt.
Yeah, just get the silk button down to match. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, I mean, that was the style at the time.
Yeah, get a Dragon Ball Z button down shirt, riding a lowrider bike with flames on it. See, you could have been a cool ass kid, then you chose to just not do that.
Yeah, just that, I guess, I don't know. Well, maybe in a future episode we'll dissect where it all went wrong. What sent me on this path.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I don't have quite enough data yet. I think you bitched out though. I'm just gonna go on record.
I mean, there were definitely a couple points. And you know what? Speaking of bitching out, I feel like that's all we got for today. I think this is a good time to wrap up the show.
Oh hell yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, as usual, thank you guys very much for watching. If you want to support the show, remember to tell all your friends about us. And as we mentioned at the start, we have a Patreon now, so consider dropping us a couple bucks there. Dave, do you want to give a shout out to our current sponsors of the show, everyone who's already signed up.
No, because you control the Patreon, so I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I forgot about. Yeah, so listen, I signed up for the Patreon like a couple years ago, so we got a slightly higher cut of the donation money than other people. But if I wanted to do like a team thing and bring Dave onto it, I would have to upgrade to like a higher tier where they'll take more of our money. So it's not actually worth it. But I'm looking at it now, and I'm just seeing this for the first time. We have a new sponsor. So, all right, let's read them off. All right, shout out to Shalom Guy, Protogon, and Nick. Nick, I'm not going to read your last name because I don't know if you want that on there, but maybe let us know on the Patreon. Shout out to all three of you guys. Very cool. Thank you for sending us a sinister $6. We love you. Very fresh. We love you all. And yeah, fucking cool. Shit, we actually have a Patreon now. We're like real podcasters. Yes, now we're slightly less in the red. You know, any amount is pretty fresh, so I'm happy. I like it. Yeah. No, all irony aside, we love you guys. Thank you so much for showing your faith, for believing in us. We hope we don't disappoint you guys. Please look forward to all the fun and madness we're gonna unpack on our silly little podcast. Yeah, we're just getting started, baby. So stay tuned for more fucking excitement. Ooh-wee. Yeah, make sure to loiter in the Discord. We promise we won't call the cops on you. This has been Super Despair World. Thanks, guys. Good night. Yeah, good fight. Good night.